curious, how I could, I guess, position this in terms of opportunities that postdocs from UC Berkeley can have at UC Davis. And actually, just to put this in context, we've been developing a postdoctoral entrepreneurship group at UC Davis modeled after BPEP for the last couple of years. It's struggled a little bit here and there, but it's called DPEC, which is the Davis Postdoctoral Entrepreneurship and Career Group. So anyways, we're hopeful that we can get some new blood in there and keep it alive, because we're really encouraged and really love what you guys have built here through BPEP. So anyways, just real quickly, so my role at UC Davis is to help launch startup companies out of the university. We have a number of programs that I'll talk about, and what we want to see is how we can collaborate more with UC Berkeley. As you may know, some people think well, we were the Ag School of UC Berkeley. So we're very, very closely affiliated, and even though it's become its own institution, there's so much synergies between a number of the programs that we have through Citrus, through a lot of the ag programs, and certainly a lot of the other research institutes that have a lot of cross collaboration between Berkeley and Davis. So just real quick, by background, he gave a nice overview, but I wanted to spend 1 minute just talking quickly about my path. And so I was a Ph.D. out of UC Davis. I'd been involved in startups long before that. I went to go work for my first startup, moved to Texas from California to go work for a nanotechnology startup at 17. So that's how do you get 20 years of entrepreneurship. I dropped out of school and joined my first startup at 17. So that tells you my age. And then after graduate school, I'd gone to, work for lots of startups, pitched to venture capital funds, always been told no. And so I was really interested in, why they kept telling me no. And so I went to go work for a venture capital fund. In fact, I went to go work for one of the funds that had told me no for my diagnostics company. So I went to go work for Burl, which was a VC, life science focused VC out of San Francisco with about $1.8 billion under management, and really was a fascinating experience. What I didn't like about that job is my job was to tell no to 100 companies a month. That basically we had 100 companies that would come and pitch to us with their pitch decks or come in person and pitch, and we had to say no to that. When I transitioned into investment banking, my role was to help build companies and help them get financed, help them raise capital, help them think through clinical trial strategy, help them think through IP strategy, licensing agreements, and that part was fascinating. And every single thing that I did, actually on both sides, from the investment side and the investment banking side, was the science. And the PhD and all of my science was the critical role for all of that. And so I guess if you have any questions about careers in finance, working either in equity research, investment banking, or venture capital, they're fantastic careers for scientists. They need science, and it's a really good way to leverage your science, but then apply it to that translational commercialization pathway. Anyways, so moving on, I'm now at UC Davis, where there's a program called Venture Catalyst. We're a sister unit of our technology transfer office. So we predominantly work with faculty and postdocs. That's our kind of main two. Sometimes PhD students are in their 5th year and looking to translate their research out of the lab. But a lot of our programs are really geared towards postdocs, because they're the ones that can actually take the technology out of the university and do something with it. So, again, the goal that we have through our programs is really how do we, take that early stage research, teach our postdocs, in this case, how to write SBIR grants. That turns out to be one of the main mechanisms for a lot of our startups to raise this capital. In the last 5 years, we've helped our startups out of UC Davis raise about $15 million in SBIR funding, and it's really by running SBIR workshops. If you're familiar with what QB3 runs, they run some fantastic SBIR workshops. We've modeled ours after theirs. In fact, they helped run ours for the first few years, and it turns out to be the easiest way. The problem is you need to engage early. The challenge with SBIR workshops is you need to apply early and often, because it takes a few cycles to learn how to apply for an SBIR, so that becomes the opportunity or the challenge is to learn the forms that you need to file, the letters of support that you need to fill out. But it usually becomes a very critical way for postdocs to, take all the research that they're, spending 12 hours a day doing, or graduate students, and now say, hey, I want to actually do something with this, and that SBR funding gives you that first mechanism. So we really value that, and we help run a lot of workshops on that. So we run a number of programs that help startups, and one of the things is certainly this would be available for UC Berkeley students, especially if we can maybe affiliate some sort of affiliation with the university at Davis, but I think just in general for Berkeley postdocs, we can make that connection pretty easily, and we can provide a lot of the support to any Berkeley postdocs as well. And some of these programs are certainly ones that are available through a lot of programs here at Berkeley, including SkyDeck and others. But so our START program, we have our LegalNet, basically no cost, no fees incorporation, so no cost, no commitment either, incorporation services with top quality law firms, typically in the Bay Area, that make sure that that first year of your corporation, all the forms and documents that you're going to need, that you're set up correctly, that when you go for that first round of financing, that you're set up correctly, and that you don't have to go back and change your corporate structure or your corporate bylaws. Make sure you're correctly set up. One of the important things, Haas has some great resources for this as well, but when you're drafting your first pitch deck plan, one of the things that you're going to need is to really understand your market landscape and your competitive landscape. You see these $5,000 market reports, and that's usually too expensive. Again, if you can meet a Haas student, they have access to a lot of those really great market reports through their business school, and so get to know your fellow MBA student and ask them for some of those market reports. But in that context, we also have a market analyst that works with our group that used to write a lot of those market reports, and so he'll write a condensed version of a market report for our startups. We have a lot of other mentoring programs and programs that help companies through that basic early stages of setting up their company. You can probably skip that one, it's just the law firms. And then the other thing that we run is, so our model for incubation services is to partner with public-private partnerships, and so we run a number of these partnerships with incubator facilities in the Davis-Sacramento region. Why would you want to move your company to the Davis-Sacramento region? Well, there's many different advantages or disadvantages as well. Capital being one. There's not a lot of access to capital in Davis-Sacramento. But just to put things in contrast, so the UC Davis H.M. Klaus Life Science Innovation Center, it's a 3,000 square foot incubator, wet lab capabilities with greenhouse, is $300 a month for a bench space and shared access to every type of human cell culture, laminar flow hood, plant capabilities. And so that kind of puts things in contrast to what the pricing you can get here even at Berkeley Biolabs or some of the incubators regionally. And just in general, the square foot price for any your own lab space is going to be much cheaper in the Davis-Sacramento region, with the same access to the ability to hire employees from the university, so there's advantages there. And then we partner with a number of other incubators as well. So if you're more on the engineering space, we have those types of facilities as well. This was just how we connect with some of the incubators, and certainly Berkeley SkyDeck. That's obviously yours, but we can send people there. But we've developed partnerships with a lot of the various accelerators that you might want to apply to. Berkeley has a lot of those connections, but certainly through, IndieBio is one that's taken a lot of our biotech companies from UC Davis. But anyways, all great programs to potentially apply with. So yeah, that's it. And, we really want to see how we can create partnerships more with the BPEP and want to support, any of the activities that you're interested in. And yeah. I might just mention Alex, sorry, if, not to point you out, but Alex is are you still a postdoc? Kind of, part-time postdoc who comes up to Davis a lot because he's got a CEO and founder of a plant company. And certainly for that area of expertise, Davis is going to be, really great to partner with because we have a lot of the resources. We have a program called Seed Central, which is great for anybody working in the plant field. And so Alex has come up a lot and participates in that, and we're still hopeful we're going to get him in our incubator at some point. But yeah, so anyways.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
A quick plug-in. I wanted Zane and UC Davis to come here because I think most of the postdocs are in the hard sciences, chemistry, biology, electronics, computer sciences, and you're going to need lab space, infrastructure, and when you start your company, you'll soon realize how expensive it is to get a lab space in the Bay Area. Okay, you'll be burning through so much money so fast, so soon, and it's hard to find lab space. I'm sure everybody can attest. Who started companies, like we'll hear more from entrepreneurs, but Davis is a fantastic option just because of the great infrastructure they have and access to the labs and the mentors and the faculty. Phenomenal. So give it a shot. We'll have all the information up on our website, but you should talk to Zane afterwards.
Thanks for that plug, Naresh. Next, I'd like to introduce Bill Shalander. Bill teaches environmental entrepreneurship at Stanford University and the Haas School of Business. He was actually appointed as an expert to advise the White House Office of Science and Technology in 2013. He's currently a co-founder of an Alzheimer's therapeutic and diagnostic venture and a microbial plastics company. He's been a managing director of successful venture capital funds from the United States, Japan, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, exceeding a 65% ROI and actually returning over $600 million. I think that's pretty impressive. So without further ado, please welcome Bill Shalander.
Hi, so today I'm going to wear two hats. First I'm going to do about 6 slides on the Cleantech to Market program at Haas Business School, which is a combination of both MBA students and PhD students here at Berkeley. Our goal is to promote sustainable technologies and low carbon and identify early stage possible ventures, but to also create interdisciplinary teams between MBAs and PhDs, as Zane was saying. Each of you have different talents and backgrounds, and you can really have some synergistic effects by working with one another. We're in our 10th year at Haas with Cleantech to Market. We've gone through over 1,000 professionals, have taught more than 400 Berkeley graduate students, and have helped in over 300 National Innovation Assisted awards as well. Our goal, if everybody's seen the valley of death type of thing for the financing, what we try to do is this early part, push the button one more time, there we go. We're in that early stage with, is your technology even worth creating a venture around? And that's where we offer the students, the MBA students, an experience of evaluating a real technology. So this is immersion into the reality of taking technologies to markets. And we offer the innovators about 1,000 hours of market research with interviews with potential customers and MBA students looking at the potential market niches and applications that are capable from your technology. So we teach a variety of techniques here, but it's a interdisciplinary. So this is taking second year MBA students and usually 4th or 5th year PhDs, and it's usually equal numbers on each team that have to work together to come up with a market report and a presentation to a 300-person audience by the end, as their final exam, to pitch their technologies of where they could go. So they learn quite a bit, but one of the great things that comes out of this is the students repeatedly say, I learned how to use other people's talents so that we build a better team together. We're a Haas Business School course, but we draw PhD students from across the entire campus here. Chemistry is highlighted here. For some reason, chemistry comes to us more frequently than the others, but we've had people in quite a variety of disciplines here. And as a consequence, after 9 years, we got ranked by a business, Because magazine, as the #1 business school for clean tech careers in the US. So quite an honor there. Here are some quotes from former students. about the experience they've had and how it was very challenging. We are known to be one of the hardest working type of courses that the students take while they're at Haas, but they also come out with the richest experience. They say, this has stayed with me for my career, and we're getting people 10, 15 years, or 8 to 10 years later saying, this has helped me in my career because I know what to do when I have a situation that hasn't been presented before. I know how to go about it. And ultimately, for your benefit, this helps to lead to jobs, potentially. So we actually connect to industry. Part of our program is you have to talk to customers in industry. We require at least 40 interviews with potential customers and industry people in person. Some of those people turn out to be offering jobs when they figure out, when the industry person learns that somebody has an expertise in certain areas, they actually offer them jobs after they graduate. I want to invite you, this is my last slide on Cleantech to Market, but we're having our symposium on November 30th. It's going to be at Haas Business School in Chow Hall. It's an all-day program, but it's great for networking. We have industry people, investors, we have entrepreneurs, innovators come in this, and these are our 6 technologies for this semester. And it's open to the public, so everyone's welcome. If you can stop in at any time of the day at Chow Hall up at Haas Business School, you're invited. So now I'm going to switch hats to the I-Core. I got requested to present I-Core also, which is another program offered by NSF that provides what I consider a later stage immersion into how to test whether your product idea is worth going to market with. And they really are intense. These are intensive programs, but NSF sponsors these. And it's local facilities here with the UCs and Stanford and NSF. But they offer these, they call them educational programs. I would call them get real type of programs. They force you to go out and talk to at least 40 customers also. And you have to make a go or no-go decision within a short period of time. They have a short course, which they call a 7-day course. It's very intense. If you have a product that you think is ready to go, these are wonderful programs to try, and they have great mentorship, and they get you into the mode of, am I in the right position to offer a product and start my business? So there's some planned start dates coming on. They do about one of these a month, so whatever month you have available, you could apply for these in advance. And they have a long course, but you have to graduate from the short course first. And these are much more intense, and they're much longer, but they really give you something of a short course business degree almost by the time you've finished with this. And they too have an SBIR workshop, and I have found SBIRs to be one of the best things you can do. These are non-dilutive. They only require that you create a business, which California costs about $50 to create a business. And one of my first projects when I was up at Lawrence Berkeley Lab was to take 2 of the scientists who thought they had a great technology, and they couldn't get funding from the DOE anymore. So we agreed to, let's write an SBIR application. We got $1.5 million in our first attempt. It was just a fantastic program that not everybody's that lucky, but we were really lucky that first time. So I-Core, SBIR programs, I very much an advocate for.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bill.
A quick plug-in for Bill. Bill Shalander was one of the founding advisors for BPEP, and we started in 2011. He's been supporting us. The Cleantech to Market, I think most of the grad students and postdocs, we wait till we finish our Ph.D. or a postdoc, then we start thinking about a startup. And this is a program where you can actually start thinking about it before you leave your Ph.D. program or your postdoc program. If you're in the energy sector, you can submit your technology to the Cleantech to Market program. They will evaluate, they will do the market research for you. You should definitely use that program. You know, just go to the conference too. Great way to learn things, how they operate. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Narek.
Excellent. Thank you very much again. In the meantime, let's do an introduction.
Sure.
All right, everyone. Next, I'd like to introduce Brandon Brow. Brow? Is that?
Whatever.
He is the Deputy Director of the Molecular Foundry and responsible for development and implementation of strategies and policies that ensure the efficient and effective support of the Molecular Foundry mission. Before joining the Foundry, Dr. Brau worked at the NIH, where he led strategic efforts and planning activities, as well as congressional and public efforts, outreach efforts. Let's please introduce Brandon.
All right, so you guys are all at Berkeley. How many of you guys have been to Berkeley Lab? All right, and we're not talking about like Lawrence Hall of Science. We're not talking about Lawrence Livermore National Lab. We're talking about Berkeley Lab, right? Okay, so I work at the Molecular Foundry. We have a beautiful view right down into Memorial Stadium, so I can hear the band practice every Friday afternoon. And I work at one of the 5 user facilities. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you about the Foundry will apply to other user facilities at the National Lab, which for you guys, your ID badge will get you on the Berkeley Lab shuttle and right up there. You don't have to go through any of that security nonsense. So let's get right into it. So the Molecular Foundry is one of 5 nanoscience user facilities that is funded by the Department of Energy, so it's federally funded, and it's supported by, it is supported by Berkeley Lab. Now, we are a user facility, and what that means for those of you who are not familiar is that there are certain scientific resources that require a certain amount of funding that you're just not going to find at every single university, at every single company, right? And so the federal government creates these things and then forces us all to share. If you're not familiar, like a telescope is a great example, right? So the Foundry is a user facility for nanoscience, but it's also a research center. And the way this works is that we have established staff of about 45 researchers who are really world-class in their field, and they get to do their science, but they also have to help people who come in there and work on their projects as well. So it's this kind of odd collaborative model that works really nicely, especially for small businesses. So to give you a bit of a sense of what we can provide, this is the building. My office is right there. And we have 7 technical facilities that are basically, you can think of them in terms of synthesis, so basically making materials, right? So this is mostly our chemists and our biochemists. We have a characterization suite that has not only million-dollar microscopes, but they're also developing new ways to look at materials. We have a clean room and a theory facility. The idea is that you as a scientist, as an entrepreneur, as really anybody, can come in and tap into something that maybe you're very familiar. Maybe you are an organic chemist and for whatever reason you have a need for a fume hood, right? Imagine that. Well, you can come in here, use our fume hood. Maybe you're a microscopist, you need a TEM. You don't have an extra $5 million to buy one. You can use ours, right? Alternatively, let's say you have a great idea. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. When I was in grad school, I had what I thought was a great idea that required organic chemistry. I know nothing about organic chemistry. It scares the ever-living you-know-what out of me. So in order for me to take advantage of that idea, I had to find an organic chemist. You can do that here. You don't have to have expertise in a given field to be able to tap into that resource. What's more is you also get to tap into Berkeley Lab. So here's a bunch of logos and acronyms and whatnot. Basically, Berkeley Lab is a $1 billion national lab that spans pretty much every type of science. And so we have Foundry users who are at the Foundry but are also tapping into NERSC, which is one of the most powerful supercomputers in the world. Tapping into the ALS, which is the world's premier soft X-ray facility. JGI, which is doing genomics. Basically, all over the map, you get access to these things. I'm going to show you the world's ugliest slide. This is something that our director likes. He calls this shock and awe. I don't know if that's because it's like shockingly awful, but it's basically saying we do a lot of science. So you can ignore all these, all this noise and just kind of order of magnitude, look up at the top left, basically. This gives you a sense of, we're about a $30 million enterprise. We've got a ridiculous number of publications and people coming through. A little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to understand. Of our users, you can see 95% of our industry users are small businesses, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about why that might be. So these are examples of small businesses that have been at the Foundry recently. And as you kind of scan through here, you can really see that it spans all of science. You've got things dealing with biomimetic polymers and that would allow us to freeze things without the ice crystallizing and breaking down tissue. You've got new energy storage technologies. You've got this manufacturing, this polyspectra thing, putting aside politics. Secretary Rick Perry came in here and he, looking at these 3D printed materials and kind of daring him to break it. And it's always fun to see someone in the cabinet, trying to break a toy. Plant PV, I suspect, Bill, you might have been referring to Plant PV when you were talking about the SPIR. These are folks who actually had a great idea. They came in, they tried the idea, it sucked. But they were in the Foundry, and so they were able to pivot and came up with a completely new idea. And I don't know if you know this, Bill, they're about to sell their IP to this massive company for, they should buy us a building, basically, is the point. It's a real success story. Okay, so how do you get in and what does this all mean? Basically, we have two calls for proposals. There's a fall and a spring. For small businesses, right, you might be more interested in the rapid access. And what that means is that we can accept those at any time of the year. The only extra hurdle you have to provide is saying that this is particularly timely. If you are starting a business, everything is timely, so that's easy. It's a 2-page proposal. It's super short, right? I don't know how many of you guys have written NIH proposals or DARPA proposals. They're a phone book, right? Do you guys even know what a phone book is?
Yeah,
anymore?
barely.
Yeah, barely. Okay. Now I'm dating myself, right? But it's super short. If successful, you get free access to everything the Foundry provides for an entire year. And this means that you can use it however you like. Most small businesses basically set up shop in the Foundry. And when I say free, that means free access to every single piece of equipment that we have, free access to every single scientist that we have. We will pay your consumables, your PPE, right? Everything except your mac and cheese and the cot that you're sleeping on as an entrepreneur. It's all done by peer review, which I'll talk a little bit about. And here's the other kind of magic word. It's free for non-proprietary research. Now, this is where everyone recoils. They say, non-proprietary, wait a minute, I want to protect my IP. We have exactly one user in the last 5 years that's used the proprietary model. What this means is we've got small businesses all the way up to Fortune 100 companies that are on non-proprietary agreements. The reason being is that we are trying to help you with a scientific question. And that scientific question is often articulated in the pre-competitive space. You don't have to disclose whatever IP you have. I was talking to Zane earlier about scale up, right? If you come in here and you say, oh, I want to scale up my thing, that's not going to pass scientific review. If you want to say, I want to learn about how you mix molecule A and B and increase yield by 3%, that's a scientific question that we can get on board with. We don't have to even know what A or B is. And then the last piece here is, if you invent it, you own it. This is an incredibly generous situation here. So even if you are on non-proprietary agreement, using the Foundry, in the Foundry, if you discover something without assistance from anybody else, you still own it. If you work with one of our people and you invent it together, you co-own it. It's a pretty nice deal. Very quickly, this is how projects or proposals are reviewed. Has to have some good science. You have to have a good plan. You can't just say, hey, I have this great idea. You have to have a plan to execute on it. You have to justify why you want to be there. And you have to bring something to the table. You can't just say, hey, I'm a comparative literature major and I've got this idea in organic chemistry. You have to bring something to the table. And so just a few things. There's the website, which has all this information and more. The next standard proposal call is in March, so that gives you a little bit of time to get on that shuttle, come up, meet some of our scientists. They will work with you on your projects and kind of fine tune your ideas. We also have a user meeting every year, which actually just passed. But if you're still around next summer, I'd encourage you to come. And yeah, I am around, and I'm more than happy to talk with you after over a beer or pizza or whatever.
All right, last we'll have Brian Lee. Certainly not least, we have Dr. Lee, who has over 15 years of R&D experience in molecular biology, metabolic engineering, and fermentation. He has a Ph.D. in biology from MIT, a B.S. in biochemistry and mathematics from the University of Chicago, and Dr. Lee has led the development of the synthetic biology platform at Visolis.
Maybe I can plug in before. So we called Dr. Lee to share his experiences because UC Berkeley has new resources where if you want to start a company, you can use the lab resources of faculty on campus. They have a special agreement. So they're one of the users of the facility. The agreement is called SSUFFIE, Shared Special User Facility for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Agreement. So he's going to share some of his experiences. So if you want to start a company, you don't have to go outside of the campus. You go to one of the faculty members who can provide those resources and go from there. Thank you so much.
Hi. So I guess I'll briefly tell you about Visolis and how we end up being in part of this user facility at Berkeley. So Visolis was founded actually by out of MIT in 2015. So we were looking to the C2M program to replace petroleum derived plastics from renewable sources. And as you probably saw, like one of the programs on the Lawrence Berkeley is the cyclotron row program, and we were one of the first companies accepted into that program, and actually also one of the first users in the Molecular Foundry. So like the cyclotron row is a great program for if anybody's looking to do any sort of green energy startup, and basically the DOE recognizes that like there's not enough funding for hard green tech, and so they started this program to provide not only a little bit of funding, but mainly the resources available at the national lab. And as Naresh mentioned, like finding spaces, particularly in the Bay Area, is extremely difficult. So part of the cyclotron row program provide you with laboratory space. So and that's how we actually end up being at Berkeley, because we would start collaborating on some of these SBIR grants that you have heard a lot about with Berkeley faculties, particularly Professor Adam Arkin and Dean Toss. And at the time, they were both located at the Energy Bioscience Institute. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but the program there was, the building was built by BP. They were looking to fund green renewable fuels, and so there was a bunch of Berkeley PIs working there. And at the time, in 2015, BP was pulling out of that program, so there was space available, and because we were collaborating with the faculty there, they invited us generously to come to the building and like allow us really for free to use the benches and the resources there, and that has been fantastically great for us as a company, with all of the resources available both at LBL and at UC Berkeley. We got a bunch of SBIR awards. I think we have 7 or 8 by now within the 3-year spans, and a half dozen other awards from including private funding from the Gates Foundations. So specifically about this user agreement. In 2015, when BP was rolling out, there was available space and resource at the Energy Bioscience Institute, and the director there, Professor John Coase, was looking to ways to use that resource. So he founded a incubator program there, and so we were one of the first companies, because we were already there, to be grandfathered in. So like we got access to all of these resources that we, as a small startup, would not have been able to afford They have like, 4 LCMS-MS, like 4 GC-MS, there's HPLCs, like half a dozen of them, and all the resources that we would need to do the synthetic biology and the chemistry that we needed to do to bring our technology to market. And as Naresh mentioned, like we have kind of outgrown the program now. We have like now up to a dozen people. And so now we're looking for actual like space outside of the university, and it's been extremely painful, let me tell you. But the other thing that I should mention, like being located on campus, the other advantages is in addition to the C2M program, we have gotten like a bunch of market research done for us by Berkeley students. There's the BIS program, which is from the business group. I can't remember what it stands for, Business Innovation something maybe. And then there's also the PDP program, which is the Process Development Project, which have students that would take our process, do the market research, do like the, it was flashed up there as one of the things that they offer is the techno-economic analysis. And once you start applying for SBIRs, they always want that on there. And as I learned from like going to some of these SBIR meetings is that actually that part of it matters a lot to the funding agencies from like DOE, NSF. Like they actually want to see that that you actually have a path to, that you actually know your market, that you actually have a path to get your products to commercialization. And actually having somebody or do the market research for you, like really gives you a step up when you apply for that. Because like that part of it, even though like I came from an academic background, luckily our founder not only did a Ph.D. at MIT, but he also was at the business school, the Sloan Business School there, so he really understands the business side of it and was able to write these market transformation plans that they call it. And that's like worth 30% of your grades on your SBIR, so those are extremely important for getting those grants. And I guess the last thing I should mention, being on the other advantage you get for being on Berkeley campus, not only access to the world-class faculty that but also like half of that company postdocs and students directly out of Berkeley and EBI, because like they really have all of the expertise that we were looking for, because they were working really like cutting edge on that field. So like recruiting was extremely easy for us. Like we have not actually, like if you look at our website, we have nothing. It's really word of mouth within, like, because we were located in the building already. Like the people know us, and we got extremely talented people for very easily. So that's also something that I'm not looking forward to once we move out of here to be able to recruit people. But I think that's about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, now I'll turn it over to Naresh, who will moderate a Q&A panel, and then we'll get to the remaining pizza and beer.
Great. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you all the speakers. But before I move forward, I want to thank Nitin, who has led the workshop. BPEP, there's Alex, there's Hisham, there's Karen. Can you please stand up for a second? Please give a round of applause. They're all full-time postdoc. Saad. They're spending their time to organize these workshops. And the reason we do these workshops is, previously only industry jobs and faculty jobs were the options for postdocs and grad students. We wanted to provide entrepreneurship as a pathway and provide the resources, fantastic resources like all of these things. I'll turn over to you guys. How about this? If you have any questions, let's start there. And if not, I'll start some conversation. Any questions? Okay, I will start. Bill, I'll start with you. How does a postdoc or a grad student get into your program? What do they need to do into the Cleantech to Market program?
Have good news and bad news.
Postdocs cannot get into the program, but your project can. We can take companies and even ideas of potential companies, and you could submit them for application. We usually review about 50 to 60 proposals in the January to February timeframe for the coming fall, and then we whittle that down to about 10, and then we let the students choose from those 10. But you must be a student in order to get into the program itself, but projects can get in from anywhere in the country, literally anywhere in the world.
Great. Any questions on that? Okay, this is mostly informational. Don't worry if you don't have any questions. Okay, we just wanted to provide all the information so you can go back, think through, and come back to us. I'll move to Brian. So we are talking about bringing your startup to the lab on the campus. What are the difficulties that you had to face, and how did you get over those things?
As I mentioned, we were just very fortunate in our timing, so there was not a lot of difficulty because there was already available spaces.
Okay.
Because we were already collaborating, they were very open to it. I think right now we're running into the challenges because we have, from when we started 2 years ago, it was just really 3 of us to now 10 people, and we're space limited. We are now, because this user agreement program is really intended for very early stage startup for 2 or 3 people, and we have really very much outgrown that, and we need to grow further, but we can't right now because it's just no available space.
Yeah. This is good. The SSUFFIE agreement is fantastic because previously, if you want to go and work in somebody else's lab while you're a postdoc or a grad student, it was almost impossible. They didn't have a structure. You had to always go outside of the campus, find resources to set up your lab. But they're trying to slowly but steadily move into this. This is still a pilot program, I think. You basically go to the IP office, intellectual property office, IPRA, and then tell them that I want to start a company. This Professor X has the lab resources, and Professor Y has these resources. I would like to approach them and see if I can work in their lab. That is how it starts. And there's an application process. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get over the hurdles, but IP office is really helping you guys, so you should benefit from that.
Yeah, I guess to follow up on that also, in terms of IP, they try to make it so that it's a standard agreement for all, so it makes it easier. Whereas before, if you don't have some sort of agreement in place, that individually you have to work it out with the university and the professor, and it could take a lot of time. And the same thing with the Entrepreneurship program is great in terms of that as well, is that they have a standard, particularly with we start collaborating with other national labs like LBL and any of them, they have standard what they call CLEA agreements, which are joint development agreements where all the IP and all of that is all very clearly. So
The other benefit of having a startup on campus is, Brian used a lot of MBA students to do their market research. The BPEP, it started a program called the Berkeley Science Fellows Program, where if you actually have a startup, we will recruit postdocs to intern with you guys. They'll provide 4 to 5 hours of their time every week. They've been helping startups at Skydeck and Citrus Foundry. They spend time helping you write grants, review the grants, troubleshoot so somebody has a problem purifying protein. They'll come to the lab, help you sort out things. So there are so many programs, you just have to look out, reach out at their resources. It's a good segue to move to Brandon. I did not talk much about Brandon because he mentioned about so many free resources. These are phenomenal resources. I've been there. If you don't use that, it's a failure on your part. Brandon, you have an application process. What are the biggest mistakes people do when they apply? I know it's a 2-page agreement. You made it look so simple, but what are the things they need to do before they apply? Can they talk to you guys before? And how long does it take, if you can elaborate on that?
Yeah, you kind of answered your own question. I mentioned that you can get up to Berkeley Lab with a UC Berkeley ID. And I would really strongly, if you're interested in using the Foundry or really using any of the user facilities, get up there and talk to the scientists, because for us, we are a collaborative research environment. So what that means is you're not coming up there like the ALS where you have a sample, is zap it with some X-rays and you leave. You're coming up there and hopefully really, that lab becomes part of your research and part of your toolkit. And so it's really hard to write a collaborative research proposal if you don't know intimately, the lab space, the people, their expertise, what they bring to the table, and how that fits within your idea. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake. I think the other thing for folks who kind of have business on the mind is you have to remember that the research, that we are a fundamental basic research organization. And so there is going to be a certain amount of review that has to answer a fundamental basic scientific question. And as I mentioned in the talk, it doesn't have to be something that's completely decoupled from the goals of the business. You just need to know how to package that. We have a lot of experience doing that. We have a lot of experience finding ways to articulate what you want to do in a way that's not going to threaten your IP or your company, that is going to be very, very much of interest to the reviewers. So yeah, I think just talk to us. You now know somebody at the Foundry, so please feel free to reach out to me and I can do an introduction to the scientists or the researchers that are of most interest to you.
Yeah, BPEP will be more than happy to make the connections for you guys, and reach out, please. These are new, these did not exist 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I don't think so. When we started in 2011, BPEP, there was nothing. Cleantech market was just taking off, but we come a long way. Times are good. Bill. Yes. Yeah.
There's a bit of a plug for BPEP here because when I was at the lab, I was in tech transfer in 2010, and I saw these fantastic technologies coming from the world-class scientists, and Berkeley Lab is one of the most diverse laboratories in the world, and this is also a unique situation here where you have a major campus and a national lab right next to each other. There's no other national lab like that, so it's an extraordinary resource to tap into. But in tech transfer, my job was to try to create startups from these fantastic technologies that we patented, and wow, these are great technologies. I knew industry and how to do funding, and having been in venture capital, so that's fantastic, but we need people to do this. And that is, these scientists are not very good entrepreneurs. They're career scientists. They need people to understand the technologies to go forward in the commercialization. They can partner with the entrepreneur. Most of these serial entrepreneurs don't know enough about the technologies. They need technical expertise. Your PhD brands you as a very smart person. So you don't have to be in exactly the same discipline, but the fact that you know how to look at technology really deeply is extraordinarily valuable. But I discovered BPEP as the missing link to commercialize technology and use the BPEPs, the postdocs, as the technical expertise to join with an entrepreneur to take technologies from the lab or campus. So it's a fantastic program.
Thank you. Thank you for calling it out. We are actually starting a new program pretty soon. We are working on the Chief Technology and Scientific Officer Academy. We're trying to train postdocs to take on those roles eventually. We are working with the PDP program in the chemistry department soon. That's coming up. Stay tuned for that. But we're also going to train startup scientific officers. They're going to be a part of this. We're going to be bringing experienced scientific officers, technology officers from the Valley and beyond. But new things are coming up. Coming back to Bill, C2M helps people with a go or a no-go decision. What happens in that process? What do you guys help an entrepreneur or a technology when it comes to you for evaluation?
And I'm going to correct you there. The I-Core gives you a go, no-go decision.
Sorry, my bad.
Cleantech market is even earlier. It says, do you have even a technology doesn't have other possible applications that could be a better first-to-market, niche market to pursue? We look for high-value, early markets that are actually small volume, that will be your first markets where there's a greater pain or a greater benefit. People are willing to pay higher. or that early stage technology that isn't quite mature yet, but it has the potential to grow into commodity. So we talk about learning curves and how unit cost per pound of product or whatever it is will come down as you gain more and more experience. So what's that transition for your first customer to your 100th customer to your 1000th customer? And literally we get interviews when we have our students go out and ask, would you try this new technology that our scientists and our innovation team has come up with? And almost always a industry person says, I do not want to be your first customer, I want to be your 101st customer. So something has to be given. Who's the first 100 customers? And that's what we really try to focus on. How can you identify a product for that first 10 customers or first customer even?
That's good. Any questions now? Okay, I'll go back to Brandon. One success story from coming out from your facility.
Just one.
I'll start with one. If you have a combination of them, if you can pick and choose like different things they did right when they went through your program, that'll be great.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to one of our entrepreneurs before I came here, and she, just absolutely brilliant, had just finished a postdoc at the NIH, and she developed a way to functionalize a nanodiamond, which, if you don't know, it has very unique fluorescent properties. And she was able to functionalize them to bind to particular targets in breast cancer. And so she was on the verge of signing up a lease down in the South Bay for some lab space. And she was going to stand up this company, and she was trying to find, she's from the East Coast, she's thinking about there, she's thinking about the Bay Area, she's thinking about San Diego, this is biotech. And she was about to sign a lease. And someone basically told her, you should check out the Molecular Foundry. So she called me up and I arranged a tour, which I do all the time. And I said, you don't need to sign a lease. You don't need to go out and buy a couple AFMs and optical microscopes and basically spend all your initial startup capital, hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, right? And she was immediately sold, but she had to get on a plane that night. She knocked out a proposal in the next couple hours, and she barely sneaked through and her sent through. And basically, she was able to redirect all of that initial money instead of into rent, instead of into relatively routine instruments. She was able to invest in 2 or 3 really brilliant minds to build her team. And she came to the foundry, and within, I think, 3 or 4 months of being at the foundry, she launched about, 9 or 10 products in this company. So, I think that really illustrates some of the impact, because she was able to come and not only access some of this equipment, but she was able to explore various scientific avenues that she wouldn't otherwise. I think that translates all the way up to big companies. Any of you guys ever heard of the company Magic Leap? Yes, no? They're worth like $2 billion, something like that.
Yeah.
Basically, you guys all know Google Glass, right? A little projector projects an image onto some glass, and then you can, read your email or whatever. These folks are doing nanoscale photonics, and so they are producing nanoscale holograms that they project directly onto the retina, so that your eye can't tell the difference between that projection and reality. And so it's a completely immersive experience. And basically, anybody who's not, everyone except Google, the competitor, has invested millions and millions of dollars in these. They are no different than the story I just told. They use the foundry, not because they can't build a foundry 5 times over, but because there is certain expertise that we have in using some of these instruments. And my understanding is that you guys are all scientists. Science is a bit of an art. I can take a $10 million microscope and put any old schmo in front of it. They're not going to be able to get what a world expert can get out of that same piece of equipment. So anyway, this company that's worth $2 billion, they come in and they need to tap into our expertise, because we can make really small stuff better than anybody in the world, pretty much. And so instead of them investing millions and millions into building a laboratory, buying a bunch of stuff, hiring a bunch of people, they just come here and work with us. I think that's kind of one of the themes in a lot of our success stories.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. To put things in perspective, if you go to a private lab, if you're trying to rent a space, about a size, you spend about $1,000 a month. And in the rest of the space, you got to pay more money. So, but, I thought I was active in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, but I didn't know about Molecular Foundry until a year ago. So it's a hidden jewel. If you have some doubts, you should reach out to them. Great resource. I want to go back to Brian. One last question. We're in the Silicon Valley, and everybody is fascinated by venture capitalists and angel investors. But then, what these people have done is like they got 7 SBIR grants in 2 years. Or you stop counting?
I think we're about 3 years. I think we're up to about 9 now.
That is phenomenal. SBIR, it's government money, it's free money, no strings attached. How do you do that well? If you can share, what did you do right?
I mean, I guess as I said, being on Berkeley campus, collaborating with the researcher that is known in their field,
Yeah.
The top in their field, having them as collaborator on
Validation,
everything else.
yeah.
Having a clear vision of where we were going on the business side, and having the resources, again, the C2F program and all of that is available on campus to help us. That's why, again, we're only half a dozen people. We can't spend the time to do all of those things. So that also really helped a lot. And a lot of it is just luck. The nice thing about SBIR is that, as I found out only afterward, is that each of the agency has a budget, and they are required to spend, I believe, 2 or 3% of that on SBIR. So they just have to fund it. So that's great. But yeah, a lot of that, I think a lot of the success is because we are where we are at, and the people that we get to work with. The national labs here, and also in other places, and one other thing I want to add, I didn't mention, is that the SSUFFIE program, we are located directly on campus and actually renting spaces and such. But there's also there are other ways that this program can work. We know that one of the other companies inside Monroe that is also part of this program, they have a kind of more of a user agreement. So they really they have their own space, but they really need access to the really expensive equipment that is available here. And so as part of their collaboration to this program, they get access to all of this LCMS, UCMS, NMR, etc. That is really helping them to their. And as we move out of Berkeley, we'll be probably transitioning to that kind of model as well.
Great. Yep, Bill. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just one statistic on that. On the SBIRs, which are non-dilutive, they're just fantastic. Sources of early funding, you're usually minimum of $100,000 in phase 1, and then you can go on up from there. But on average, nationwide, its success rate is about 18 to 20% success rate for winning an SBIR. But for UC Berkeley based SBIR applications, if you've gone through one of these workshops, the success rate is well over 50%. So it's almost like free money because you're coming from Berkeley.
Yeah. Thank you for the statistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work with the NIH, and so I just kind of want to echo what they're saying about SBIR. So there's SBIR and there's STTR.
Yeah.
Both of them, as you said, have a set aside. And so there's this pot of money that basically all these program managers in DC, they cannot give it to the professor at Berkeley, right? They have to give it to a small business. And in several of these programs, it's north of 50%, whereas any kind of other academic grant is single digits oftentimes. And I've had program managers come to me begging on my door saying, I want to give you this money, but I can't go find a small business because they are so desperate to find some good ideas. There are SBIR programs where they just can't find people to find a good enough idea, but they're obligated to give the money away. And so really, it's sitting there for the taking. I would also point out that the success rate of the Molecular Foundry is north of 70%, 70.
Wow.
A lot of that is because of what we talked about before, is that these are collaborative programs, and so you have a lot of people that say, hey, I want to collaborate with you, I really want to do a dog model for osteoarthritis, and we're like, yeah, we don't do dog models, so we don't get those ideas that are dead on arrival. And so really, 70% is pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Take advantage of that. Scientists, we are all trained to play devil's advocate and say, is this enough data to make me convinced of these findings? That should be the bar, right? And that should be the bar for in business as well. Is that VC convinced that this is going to be a product? Are you convinced that this is the truth of the world? Whatever. So I don't think that they're looking for 18 charts or some bar you have to get over. It's just, are you convinced, and can you convince somebody else? That's what I would say. There's not a page for it.
Any more questions?
Mr. 9
Yeah.
SBIR.
Yeah, so basically, at least for the phase one, they're looking for extremely early stage. So basically, we typically have 1-2 pieces of data in there, and then you get between 6 and 9 months to work on that, and then you apply for phase 2, which is where the real money is. And the other thing, nice thing about that is that it's 10-20% for the phase 1, but when you get to phase 2, it's actually about 50% of the people who get phase 1, because only people who have gotten phase 1 is allowed to apply for phase 2. So you don't really need a lot of data, but you have done your PhD, you have written proposals before, so it's really very similar to those. And basically you want to have 1 or 2 pieces of data, and then that 6 months, you might want to save some of the data for the phase 2 because you only have a very short time to get to that point. And you just want to make your work plan and deliverables something that you can accomplish in that time, because that will really impact your success for the follow-on. That's where we really want to be.
And we have QB3 workshops and SBIR workshops on campus. Yes, Brandon.
I would say kind of one thing that everyone should be taking away from this is that you guys are really lucky to be at Berkeley. There's a lot of places in this country and this world where you do not have the resources that we represent and beyond. And I think that a lot of the success in business, really the success in life, right? Some of it's hard work, some of it's good ideas, some of it's luck, but how industrious can you be? And we all represent opportunities for you to, when you're putting forward your idea to an SBIR or to a VC or to whatever, if you can say, hey, look, I'm leveraging that opportunity and I'm talking to that person and so on and so forth, you look really smart. And you look like you're a problem solver and someone who can find a way to succeed. And I think that that's something that, you guys would be foolish not to take advantage of, because there's a lot of great programs around.
Start early. Don't wait till you finish your PhD or postdoc. We always tend to do that, like finding a job. Let us finish our postdoc or a grad school and then go look for it. Start early, come to these workshops, network, and throw your ideas at people. For that reason, we're going to do a new thing from next month on. We're going to have you guys pitch your ideas. If you might have some ideas, this is friendly audience. Come here, pitch a 2-minute pitch about what your idea is. What comes out of that previously was, if there are other people interested in that idea, they could become your co-founder. Maybe the speakers can, find some resources for you guys. So there's nobody going to steal your ideas. One thing we scientists are always scared of is if I tell my idea, somebody's going to steal it and going to do something about it. But believe me, it's all about execution. Your idea means shit. Seriously. I mean, if it is so easy that somebody can actually listen to that and go do that, There's no business around that. You know, come pitch, and execution is like really, really painful, and it's a long process. But you as PhDs have the persistence to actually go through that process. You know, we live with little money in grad school and postdoc. We can do this as startup founders. You know, I'll leave you on that note. We have lots of beer. The speakers are going to be around. Please network. Come talk to us. Thank you for coming.